Hello and welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chats. Not as good as FDR's, but hey, it's something. Next foreign election video. Here we go. Now, before we get into the, I think I will have posted a interesting video on the podcast, on Patreon. And, by the way, let me know if there are any ways I could spice up the Patreon, because I really would like some more of you to, give some money. I mean, especially considering certain videos I do don't do well. I guess I should use this time to also shout out last week's main series video. I did a video about Dr. Seuss, which, funnily enough, literally I uploaded the video. It was already set to go on Thursday. And then, 2 days before the video comes out, I get recommended a video of a person, of a way bigger channel than mine, Quality Culture, making a huge video essay about Dr. Seuss. So analyzing the political, racial, and other themes regarding Dr. Seuss books. And it's just wow. Literally 2 days before my video comes out, they make that. It's infinitely better than mine. The only thing that makes mine interesting is the fact that I did the entire episode in rhymes. And that video is not doing so hot, which I already kind of expected the video not to do so hot. And then especially after that video came out, I knew it was going to do hot. But, I mean, I liked it. I thought the video was a banger. I thought the video was a banger, dude. But anyways, that's just, I just wanted to talk about that for a little bit. With that out of the way, let's get right into the news. First, we're getting into a major problem in regarding to Haiti. Haiti's Prime Minister, Ariel Henry, resigned as law and order collapses. Haiti's Prime Minister, Ariel Henry, has agreed to resign following weeks of mounting pressure and increasing violence during the impoverished country. It comes after regional leaders met in Jamaica on Monday to discuss a political transition in the country. Mr. Henry, currently stranded in Puerto Rico after being prevented by armed gangs to return home. He said his government would resign following the institution of a transition council. I'm asking all Haitians to remain calm and do everything they can for peace and stability to come back as fast as possible, Mr. Henry stated in a video address addressing his resignation. He has not been allowed back in Haiti after leaving in late January for visits to Guyana and Kenya, where he signed a deal on development of an international security force to help tackle violence. Now, the reason why he's currently not really popular in Haiti is because he's apparently been postponing elections for the upcoming, because he was supposed to be a transition leader after the president was assassinated, and, well, he just ain't been doing so hot. And this is where I'm going to have to unfortunately end it, because I do not know much about the current Haiti situation. And I should probably dedicate an entire episode to talking about Haiti after doing many amounts of due diligent research first. Let me know if that's something you might be interested in, so we'll get to that at some point soon. Speaking of countries that are currently being unstable, El Salvador extends the anti-gang emergency decree for the 24th time. El Salvador's lawmakers have granted a request by President Nayib Bukele for the 24th consecutive one-month extension to an anti-gang emergency decree. The vote in Congress late Friday means that by March 27, the country will have spent a full 2 years under the decree, which suspends some rights. Bukele has used emergency powers to round up 78,175 suspected gang members in sweeps rights groups say are often arbitrary based on the person's appearance or where they live. The government has had to release about 7,000 people because of lack of evidence. So basically, again, El Salvador has been ruled as a military dictatorship for 2 years. And how he does it is he keeps asking the Congress for approval that they end up keep giving it to him, usually because he threatens them with violence. And now due to the fact that he redrew the congressional districts, and now a majority of Congress is now literally part of his party, so he doesn't have to do much to actually push for the legislation even further. Not much else I can say on that. You've already heard me bitch and moan about El Salvador's problematic political system. Let's move on to the next country with a bit of a problematic system. Or at least, it would be problematic if things didn't go actually in a good, positive way. So for those who don't remember Remember how Bolsonaro tried to copy Donald Trump and try to do a coup, but it seemed that he was really weird in regards to it? So basically, for those who don't know, the way Donald Trump tried to do his January 6th insurrection was that he stoked criticisms of the incoming administration, and then did a little bit of a haphazard transition of power just so he could leave. But basically, in the lead up to that point, he seemed to just bitch and moan about the transition of power. I think he literally waited till the last second to even remotely begin the efforts to transition power. Meanwhile, in Brazil, Bolsonaro did the transition of power, seemingly admitted defeat, and then after the transition of power was starting to begin and things were starting to move forward, and after he left office, that's when Bolsonaro started doing the whole and then tried to get his supporters to initiate a coup. But then also remember how Bolsonaro previously tried to push the worldwide community, the international community, to seemingly side with him over Lula? Well, it turns out Bolsonaro wanted to do a heck of a lot more, and it seems that first initial push to him transitioning power was not even at his request. So apparently here's what happened. Brazil's former president Jair Bolsonaro presented top of military officials with a plan to carry out a coup d'etat after his defeat in the October 2022 election. Two former commanders have told the police, according to newly released judicial documents. Testimonies made public on Friday, former Army Commander Mark Antonio Freire Gomes and former Air Force Commander Carlos Baptista Jr. said Bolsonaro held several meetings in December 2022 in which he presented a document that would have served as the basis to overturn the results of the election, which he lost to Lula da Silva. The two military officials said they sought to dissuade him. Their testimony, released by the Supreme Court, marks the first time that Bolsonaro has been directly named as actively pursuing efforts to remain in power. Their statements further complicate Bolsonaro's legal situation as they put the far-right populists at the center of the alleged conspiracy to keep him in power. That was where Bolsonaro seemingly succeeded, because you know how, when Trump was doing the whole, January 6th insurrection, basically what he was doing was he was talking out of both sides of his mouth, so that it seemed like he was doing both things. Because that's what he's famous for. He does the plausible deniability, where he's they're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and then it's dude, what the fuck, why are you talking about Mexicans like that? And he's no, I'm not talking about Mexicans like that. What are you talking about? I'm talking about, criminals. What are you talking about, dude? Much in the same way, he's we are going to go storm the building. We are going to go over there. We're going to take back our nation. We are going to fight like hell to make sure that these evil people don't take over the nation. And it's hello, you're clearly calling for people to do violent actions. And it's what are you talking about, dude? What are you talking about? I'm just saying we should protest, man. Come on. And then, since our nation is fucking brain dead for some reason, we believe that bullshit. And, yeah, but since Brazil is a better functioning democracy and better functioning nation than the US fucking is, there is no ifs, ands, or buts. It's because we have people in fucking Trump's administration that are just yep, he had perfectly legitimate all rights to just do this. Even though it's no, he doesn't. Because it seems for America, the only thing that was keeping it together was basically the fact that Pence didn't go along with it. I think literally it was the fact that if Pence went along with it, it would have just been terrible. Much in the same way, where in Brazil, it seems there was a lot more things that were standing in the way of Bolsonaro taking power and everything else. The legal system basically put all of these hurdles in place so that Bolsonaro couldn't do anything. And then, since there's no, weird parameters for the, Brazil than there is in the United States, Bolsonaro can be held accountable for his actions. Speaking of being held accountable for their actions, there's another person who doesn't want to be held accountable for their actions. Bob Menendez. For those who don't remember, Bob Menendez is the Democratic senator from New Jersey who is currently facing a lot of very, very, very shady things going on in regards to the fact that he has accepted literal bribes from many different foreign leaders, and the fact that this is the this is the most recent of all of his bribery shenanigans, because he's been He's been getting bribes for a long period of time, and it's been known that he's been taking a lot of bribes for a long period of time. And it just started hitting people now that maybe this is a bad thing. So what has ended up happening is that Menendez has been basically forced out of seeking the renomination of his party. I think apparently the jury is still a little out in the sense that he may run, but it's like he's made it basically a little bit clear that he's probably not running for the Democratic nomination. But it seems that people are thinking that he might actually end up running as an independent candidate in the general election. Because the fact of the matter is, the Democratic primary is currently being heavily fought by two factions of the Democratic Party. One is being led by Tammy Murphy, who is essentially running as the political establishment candidate, a thing that would normally be set for the incumbent Bob Menendez. But Bob Menendez is so unpopular that even if he does try to run for the Democratic nomination, he won't win. Now, I keep saying this because it's like, I remember reading reports that Menendez was retiring. Well, he was retiring, but now with this incumbent, like, independent bid, it's like, maybe he's still thinking about running, I don't know. And the other faction is led by I.N.D.I.A. Kim. I.N.D.I.A. Kim is kind of running as like an insurgent candidate. He was actually one of the first people to announce, like, when Menendez was first facing these corruption charges, he immediately announced that he was running. And then it seemed that after Menendez kind of like signaled he wasn't running, then Tammy Murphy entered the scene and was like, I'm going to take the nomination. But it's actually a bit of a contentious effort because this is a good thing on two levels. One, I think this is a good way to finally say fuck you to vote blue no matter who people. Because, let's be real, vote blue no matter who people are the reason why people like Bob Menendez are even in this position. I've made a joke multiple times saying that vote blue no matter who people just keep getting proven wrong, especially recently. They've been getting proven wrong a lot. First, we had Jeff Van Drew, who we were told, you need to support Jeff Van Drew. Jeff Van Drew has been doing so much. We need this guy to stop Donald Trump. Now his mouth is wrapped around Trump's ball sack every day. Then we were like, we need people like Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin in the Senate because, as we all know, these guys, they're important. They're facing tough re-election bids, and if we don't give our effort to them, then they're just going to lead to a Republican to win, and we don't want that. Then they go ahead and vote with the Republicans a majority of the time, and then get to the point where Kyrsten Sinema leaves the party, and Joe Manchin, despite the fact that we were told he's the only guy who can win in West Virginia, decides to not run for re-election. And the same, and with Bob Menendez. We knew about his corruption before he even ran for Senate. He was corrupt before he even ran for Senate. Like, when his first term was like, at the very least, when his first term ended, we knew he had very corrupt, like, dealings. But Democrats told us, nope, we gotta vote for him anyways. And now he's thinking of running as an independent against the Democrats. Man, vote blue no matter who when these guys are running, but remember, when it's a left-wing person, then we can start talking about not voting for Democrats. Anyways, I guess we should move on to this last news story because this is a big thing, and I really don't think we can really talk. This is one that's going to have to deal with a lot of talking. Okay, so the House of Representatives has passed a bill to ban TikTok. Now, for those who don't know, TikTok has been sort of a political thing for a while now because TikTok is an app that is owned by a Chinese company. And for those who don't understand why that's a big deal, because in China, all companies have to report directly to the Chinese Communist Party. It's not like a state-owned company, but the company then gets swallowed up by, like, basically all of the data and stuff from TikTok has to be reported directly to the Communist Party of China, like to the leaders of China. That's just how it is. All the information that is passed from the app has to go to the Chinese government. And many Republicans have raised suspicions in regards to that, with a very big hint of orange baiting. Now, orange baiting is a mix of red baiting, because communism, and yellow baiting, because China. And there's also another element of TikTok that's a little bit of a interesting thing, due to the fact that it is the latest app that represents sort of the newest generation of people, i.e. young Gen Zers and Gen Alphas. This app is a little bit different in regards to a lot of things. It's seemingly a lot less, like there's been a lot of issues that people have raised in regards to TikTok for a lot of things. Attention span, due to the fact that TikTok usually, like one of the major things that go on TikTok now is like clip of TV show on top, clip of shitty app game on the bottom, clip of Subway Surfers on the left, and then maybe something else on the right. Like, people have been accusing TikTok of like lowering people's attention spans, and then there's a lot of other issues due to the fact that since it's again a little bit of it's a little bit less filtered than a lot of other things, people will do a lot of different things on TikTok that are not necessarily things that people of older generations would do, such as a lot of different edgier TikTok trends. TikTok is also known for, like with many of these short like form apps, a lot of people do sexual stuff on there. And with the app skewing younger in regards to the people who watch it and / or make content, people are like suspicions in regards to that. But also, again, due to the fact that it is so removed from like other mainstream, like fathered in apps, you know, like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, there's a lot of different elements of TikTok that are out there. Basically, like, I guess there's no beating around the bush. A lot of the political opinions that come from TikTok are very cringe and very stupid. Like a lot of political and / or just weird things that go on TikTok, such as the case when not that long ago there was the trend of like people on TikTok saying like,
wow, you know, this Osama guy be spitting.
To tons of COVID misinformation, lots of anti-Semitism. The TikTok has even been accused of spreading Pizzagate and QAnon. I mean, it was a weird thing because like I was reading because little hint, big project I was working on. I was reading something and it was like, yeah, apparently TikTok led to the reintroduction of Pizzagate to a younger generation who didn't go through Pizzagate when it initially came around in the media, that apparently now believe in Pizzagate, even though they're like nowhere remotely close to the target demographic of Pizzagates. And TikTok is worrying for a lot of people, especially like I think because I'll be real, TikTok is the first app of the new generation that I probably am not, that I'm not a fan of. Like back when, because there's some people I'm gonna give like Vietnam flashbacks to, because TikTok didn't originally start as TikTok. TikTok used to be a different app called Music.ly, and back then everybody hated Music.ly. Now that TikTok's become a thing, people have now gotten a little bit more sympathetic to TikTok, but TikTok is still sort of like this is the first app that the first like social media app of like of the next generation that I'm just like, I just can't get into it. Like we're starting to, like, this is how it's scary. We're getting to the parts of meme culture that are gonna go past me. And again, there's some allegations wondering like, is it okay for a foreign company, quote unquote, to be the one to like push this kind of stuff into the United States? Like, what is it? Like, and there's a lot of things going on. I don't necessarily know all the ins and outs in regards to TikTok, but let's try and dispel some like notions. For one, I don't think TikTok is like that much controlled by the Chinese government. It seems like the situation that they have going on there is basically the situation that a lot of American-made apps have here, where a lot of apps like Facebook, Twitter, and all this other stuff, like they sell your metadata, and they like get rid of take all your data and give it to like people. In the US, we probably have it worse because they have the ability to just give all that data to ad companies and other agencies. Meanwhile, in China, all they got is to give it to the Chinese government. Then there's some people who claim that TikTok is spyware, which is like, again, what about all the other apps? Calling TikTok spyware and being like a diehard user of Facebook or Twitter or like any other like format is kind of like the pot calling the kettle black. People who are trying to like use this as a good thing because like, oh, well, TikTok is brain rot anyways. It's like, guys, we've all done cringe. Like a lot of people in my generation, like we're getting to the point where my generation is starting to like look at the people in our younger generations and going like, it's, and then like trying to look down on them. It's like, what are you guys talking about? That's what people did to us. Like, I'm sick of this mentality of like, oh, this generation or this generation, this generation. Guys, This generation, here's a hint for all of you out there. No matter what your age, your generation did cringy things. Your generation did shitty, cringy things. That is a fact. No matter what generation you're from, you did shitty, cringy things, did stupid trends, did all the stupid things. You did those things. It's a similar thing that, again, I kind of tackle in my big video project, where kind of like the end goal is basically explaining, like, not really a lot of these things are new things, but we're getting to the point where we're talking a lot about TikTok. What about the actual ban itself? Well, there's a lot of issues going around about the ban. Like, do you support it? Do you oppose it? The fact of the matter is, like, here's the truth. Since I don't use TikTok, I don't really have much stake in the battle. And I haven't read the bill in full, so I'm not necessarily sure how the bill is 100% in regards to a lot of other things. But I've heard a lot of people express concern that that this is basically just trying to silence a thing that is being used in a new way. And on that principle, I am opposed to that. On principle, I am opposed to that. But on the other hand, it's just like, the fact that this specific app is being used as the wedge issue for this is very odd, because it represents a lot more than just one issue. It's a lot of issues rolled into one. Like, a lot of things. It really is just a lot of issues rolled into one, which is why a lot of people are going to get so heated about this that they're going to make this greatly weird thing where they get really mad at you, then completely turn around and just get crazy about it. If you know, you know. Discord server members know. And the problem is, like, this whole thing is literally just a nothing, is not necessarily a nothing burger, but it's like, this is all purely wedge issues for nonsense. And I know this because sides keep switching on this issue. We have people, like Donald Trump during his tenure, he was super opposed to TikTok, and he hated TikTok, and he's like, we need to get rid of TikTok. TikTok is spyware. TikTok is evil, Chinese, blah, blah, blah. But now that Biden is the president, and he stated, oh yeah, if this comes to my bill, this comes to my desk, I'm going to sign it. Now all of a sudden, Trump is like, this is a bad thing. I support TikTok 100%. Much in the same way, a bunch of, like, Trump fanatics are now all of a sudden like, oh yeah, we oppose a TikTok ban. Despite the fact that everybody points out the fact that literally every single person who was on the Republican side who voted against this TikTok ban has literal clips of them a year ago saying they would full-heartedly support a ban on TikTok. And in the same way, there are a lot of Democrats who owe their entire fucking careers on TikTok. The two biggest ones that people have been pointing out, John Fetterman and Jeff Jackson. I would say Jackson owes a lot more than Fetterman, but, like, Fetterman was accused of, I didn't know much about Fetterman using TikTok a lot, but, like, I know for a fact that Jeff Jackson has been well known for his, like, short videos where he's like, hey guys, it's me, Jeff Jackson, and he would post those to of course, all of the websites that you would post those kind of videos to, including, but not limited to, TikTok. And now Jeff Jackson supports a TikTok ban. It's like, this is why I really can't take a side on this issue, because it's just like, everybody's everywhere on this issue. Everybody is everywhere on this issue. It's just like, I'm literally just letting it play out and just seeing what happens. Which, despite the fact that I don't take a stance on this issue, and the fact that the only closest thing I have to a stance on this issue is being vaguely against a TikTok ban, purely in the sense that while there are some issues that you could raise about TikTok, a lot of those issues can be fixed with simple regulations and do not necessarily need to be caused by a ban on TikTok. But I very much oppose people who like to use the notion of, like, oh, I am against censorship entirely, because a lot of people like to use the argument, despite the fact that I've literally made an argument, like, despite the fact that this person claimed to be such a big fan of me, despite the fact that I made a literal entire podcast explicitly targeting why this argument is so fucking stupid. But they're like, nope, I'm going to use this argument anyways. But anyways, let's just get off of that and move on to the main topic of this video. Oh yeah, boy. From one fan to another, we're going to talk about an issue that very much ties into one fan of mine. Okay, so before we get into it, I just want to make one thing very abundantly clear. Be prepared for a ton of mispronunciations. I should have, and I try to make sure that I do all this stuff and put them in Google Translate so I can look at the actual pronunciations in the original language prior, but I keep forgetting to do that, so we're just going blind on this. Now, India is one of those countries where I'm going to have to go a little bit into the history prior to the current day because, well, there are a lot of people who don't know much about Indian politics and Indian endeavors, and I don't know much about them either, so I did my best to try and look into at least some of it to give you a Cliff Notes version. Okay, so we don't have to go back that long, because, there's some people who probably we could go probably, forever ever, but we're going to start basically in the immediate aftermath of the Indian independence movement. I could go all in depth on Indian independence, but that's a long-standing struggle that's way above my pay grade to get into. All that's really relevant to talk about the current situation is the fact that after India gained its independence, one of the major leaders of the independence movement was a man by the name of Jawaharlal Nehru, who basically translated the movement that fought for Indian independence into a political party that would run in the ensuing elections in the new free and fair India, and would end up winning by a massive margin. Gee, I wonder why a leading independence figure would win an election. Nehru and his party would then begin a political legacy in India, ruling the country uninterrupted for 32 years. Then after a while, I guess Indians were bored, so they just went, let's try something new. Then after that, they were just like, never mind, let's go back. Then after that, there were 9 years of on and off ruler from many different political parties. And this newfound somewhat political instability, quote unquote, is where we saw the rise of a political party known as the BJP, which was the new right-wing force in India, running on an ideology called Hindutva, a Hindu nationalist ideology explicitly inspired by European fascism. Basically swap out any form of European religion with Hinduism. And the BJP would rule India from the mid-90s to the early 2000s. But since they held a slim lead, they couldn't really do much to indicate their true intentions, and basically governed as normal, conservatives. At least on the national level. When you get to the state governments, which were a bit more interesting, and a lot more lopsided for the BJP, things would get a bit more explicit. Such as the case in 2002, when there were riots in the state of Gujarat, which increased divisions among the Hindu and Muslim populations in India. I should mention this fact, because since I didn't previously, but despite what many of you might believe, India is actually a very diverse country. I know that when a lot of us think of Indians, we normally think of one religious and ethnic group, despite the fact that one of the biggest parts of Indian culture that most people in the West know is their caste system, which heightens the divide of ethnic, religious, and social class groups, which, as you could probably guess, means that there's a lot of tension with a lot of different groups in India, especially considering there are some places in India that consider themselves not necessarily Indian in the sense that, again, that's what Hindutva is for. Sorry, I sometimes say Hinduvata because that's what I always read, but it's Hindutva. It's basically where the tensions, that's basically how the tensions got worse. BJP's well, yeah, that's what the BJP wants you to think. When you think, all of India is this Hindu place, it's that's what they want you to think. That's what the BJP wins in that regard, because that's what they want you to think. So a lot of these religious and ethnic groups don't like each other. And one of the ones that is very notable is the fact that the Hindu population and the Muslim population don't necessarily see eye to eye in a lot of regards. And things got worse because the guy who was in charge of the state was the BJP chief minister, who encouraged Hindus to kill Muslims. And this is where you're starting to see a little bit of the tensions with the BJP, because that action was so radical that the head of the BJP, the BJP prime minister at the time, was literally just I should just get rid of this fucking guy, because this guy's fucking crazy and he's gonna ruin our reputation. But unfortunately, it was a little too late. Well, actually, fortunately, because the BJP ended up losing. And it was Nehru's party that ended up getting the place. However, there was a little bit of a problem with that party. You see, Nehru's party, for those who don't know, originally started out as a pretty left-wing party, all things considered. Broadly democratic socialist with maybe like social democratic tendencies, but like broadly it was left-wing enough to be noticeable. To the point where literally the founding document of India literally states that India is a socialist country. However, one small problem is, when you have a reformist socialist party in a nation, what usually ends up happening is they'll go into certain tendencies and start shifting to be more palatable in some capacity. Usually through shifting your ideology to social democracy. And in some cases, getting even further right than that, by even going so far as to just be liberals. And this party was doing its best to try and maintain that sort of viewpoint, in an effort to shift itself to be a bit more palatable to the mainstream Indian. And they also wanted to shake off some issues in regards to the fact that a lot of people were at this point starting to view this party as a vehicle for Nehru's family, the Nehru-Gandhi family. As by this point, I think basically at least a majority, if not all, of the PMs at the time, or like the leaders of the a party at the time, were members of the Nehru-Gandhi family. They tried to remedy that by picking someone who wasn't even a member of the Lok Sabha, like basically picking like someone who was a complete outsider from Indian politics to be the person to lead the party. Try to be like, look guys, we're different. But that didn't really help their image. A lot of people just didn't really see a change. So people in India were desperate for a change. And unfortunately, when the left or the center can't offer any viable change, the right is ready to try and give something different. And boy, did somebody come along to do something different. A man by the name of Narendra Modi, Chief Minister of Gujarat from 2001 to 2014, the new head of the BJP. I wonder what he did during his tenure that made him very different from the rest of the BJP, who, with his more radical right-wing politics, ended up becoming a lot more, he ended up winning the election at the time. And unlike before, the breakdown was very different. The breakdown for this cycle was 336 members of the BJP and their alliance versus 59% of the Nehru-Gandhi Party's alliance and 147 of everyone else. So even if those latter two groups joined together, it really wouldn't matter. Which meant that Modi had the power to enact the true Hindutva dream, but with a twist. It is now Modiism. Like a true fascist, he became the figurehead for a far-right, borderline genocidal and nationalistic movement, particularly targeting the Muslim population of India. Let's go over some big things that happened during his administration to explain what I mean. He banned the triple talaq in India, a rule in Muslim culture being that if you say the word talaq 3 times, you are divorced. And not only did he just make it so that you can't do that anymore, but he also went so far as to make it so that if anybody used that to justify divorce previously, all of them were null and void. So if you use a triple talaq, you are now married again. He revoked the special status of Jammu and Kashmir, 2 areas that have been in a territorial dispute with Pakistan and China, in an attempt to annex these 2 territories as official states in India, the areas being supermajority Muslim, passing a citizenship amendment that would help many refugees and other members of the Indian population who were excluded from citizenship to get on a fast track to become citizens. Unless you're Muslim. I mean, in the most literal sense, he literally just excluded Muslims. Like, literally just said, oh, if you're a person who is a refugee from this place, from this place, from this place, from this place, or of this religion, of this religion, of this religion, of this religion, you can apply for citizenship status. And it's just wait, he literally just skips over Muslims. It's what the fuck? And to move away from Islam for a little bit, he passed 3 bills that were considered so anti-farmer that the Indian Farmers Union began a massive march to Delhi. Now, things were bad enough, and the Indian opposition was just ready to just try and do everything they could to get rid of Modi. But at the last minute, one major situation happened that caused everything to just flip on its head. The head of the opposition, a man by the name of Rahul Gandhi, the next step in the Nehru-Gandhi family, created a new social movement called Bharat Jodo Yatra, Unite India March, which was intended to spread awareness of the divisive politics of the BJP and propose a better way of handling the future through economic equality, but also served to reinvigorate his party alongside one thing that was very scary, a potential merger of many different political alliances with the goal of taking down the BJP. Rahul even going one step further and saying that he was going to focus all of his attention on this endeavor and resign from his position as the head of the party to pave the way for a new face, again trying to distance the Nehru-Gandhi family from the actual party politics in an attempt to rebrand his party's image. But then, Rahul was arrested while he was getting all this stuff underway, with everyone like, wait, what? And it turns out the reason why he was arrested was because during the 2019 campaign, when he ran against Modi for the prime ministership of India, he made a joke saying, "Why do all thieves, be it Nirav Modi, Lalit Modi, or Narendra Modi, have Modi in their names?" Which a BJP politician claimed was slander against all people with Modi as a surname, which is apparently against the law. So Rahul was banned from the Lok Sabha and was sentenced to 2 years in prison, which led to widespread condemnation for his actions and the eventual reversal in the decision. Oh yeah, and just one more thing, another farmer strike happened. So basically the first farmer strike that I mentioned, it just ended up getting canceled due to COVID-19, and then now that COVID-19's kind of mellowed out, they're just back and ready to get back to work to, oppose Modi. Alright, so I deliberated long enough about all this. Let's just get into the parties and candidates. Okay, so, this is going to be very interesting, because India, like many nations around the world, is a multi-party democracy. A very multi-party democracy, with a grand total of 2,660 political parties. Alright, I got the water for the reason, boys. Here we go. No, I'm not actually going to do that. Why don't we use this time to actually try to, weed out the ones who aren't important? So, how about this? We're only going to look after all the parties that are considered important. Okay, so how many parties are in the Lok Sabha, the legislative body of India? 40? Now, you might be wondering, why? How? Well, that's very simple. India is a massive country. We all understand this. Look at India. It's a massive country, not only in the area of India, but also population-wise. Due to that, their nation's politics are really decentralized, basically being run on the state and local level. Sort of like how the US does, but way more decentralized. So what actually ends up happening is that in each state/province in India, there are very individual parties that go on in each of these areas. There is usually a presence of one of the major parties, but usually there's at least one state party or one state or local party that is somewhat prominent. Basically, let's say hypothetically I move to one Indian state. If I could just get a bunch of people in that state to support me, I could form a political party there, and I could form a political base for life. It could be anything. It could be a decently large group of friends, a religious group, an ethnic group. I could bring attention to a particular issue that would get the attention of a lot of people. Basically, you can, if you find a certain state, you can do that. There are some states that are really small, and some provinces and stuff that are really small, so there's some parties that just run in those areas that are just hey, I'll just focus on this really local issue. And it's like, okay, I like this person, so they vote for this party. And the fact of India being so massive population-wise and area-wise, that's also why Indian elections take like an entire month to do. And as you can expect, that could get a little complicated. Like, let's just say hypothetically, if every single party in the Lok Sabha went solo, nothing would get done. Which is why, thankfully, due to this fact, a lot of parties just decide to make it a little bit less complicated by not explicitly, but basically making it mandatory to have a coalition. With many smaller parties basically just choosing, okay, like, which of these two parties do I like more? Like, and it could be, and you'll see when we get into some of the parties that we are going to talk about, but it could literally be anything. Like, you can basically just choose to join a coalition, not just like a massive like when you actually get to the Lok Sabha, but even in like the like little state and province level, you could just join like state and local provinces coalitions. Like, I mean, before, India actually had multiple coalitions, and sometimes the coalitions would have informal coalitions with other coalitions, so it's like, again, it could get a little complicated, but again, it doesn't even necessarily have to be a partisan issue. It could literally just be like, oh, like, you could literally be a right-wing party that's just like, man, I just really like the Nehru-Gandhi family, so I'm going to join in their coalition. Or, man, I'm this hardcore socialist, but the Nehru-Gandhi family just really irks me to the point where I'm going to go and support Modi. And then there's, of course, like, divides because, like, there's some parties, again, that are only on the state and local level, and then there's some parties that are nationwide, so it's like, again, very complicated, very whatever, but at the end of the day, let's be real, you only got a couple of options. So we're only going to be going after the major, like, coalitions and major factors going on. So basically the national parties and major statewide parties. Basically just generally to understand the political scene. Some of these are people that are not really going to play that much of a factor in regards to the politics, but whatever. These are just some of the interesting parties to talk about. Deliberated long enough. Let's get into them. Okay, so the only national party that is quote-unquote going solo is the Bahujan Samaj Party. Technically, they are forming coalitions with individual state parties to combat the dominant two coalitions, but effectively this party is going solo. Noted by the fact that their coalition name is the BSP+. Basically just like, yeah, it's us and the rest. Which, in all of my brief understandings of Indian politics up to this point, makes sense due to the fact that the BSP has kind of painted themselves as a vaguely like, these guys suck, we're going to be the not sucky guys, without really having an explicit platform really to go off of. Again, as we get into the coalitions, we understand that the policies and platforms are a little bit vaguer, but the BSP is a party in of itself, so it's not necessarily like, why is this one specifically so vague? But like, the only thing that I can see so far that the BSP has in regards to an ideology, from what I can see, is they hate the caste system. But they don't explicitly have a message of like, let us get rid of the caste system, or let's help the lower castes, or whatever. They just don't like the caste system. They haven't really done much to, and again, like, due to the fact they keep going solo, they can't really do much to abolish the caste system, but whatever. The two parties that they are forming a coalition with are the Gondwana Ganatantra Party, a small party representing the Gandhi people, not Gandhi in the sense of like the Nehru Gandhis or Mahatma Gandhi. This one's spelled G-O-N-D-I. And the Bharat Rashtra Samiti, a neoliberal party that is the primary opposition in the state of Telangana. Again, I understand that the Indian viewers that are probably watching this are sitting there going like, shut up! But I bring these guys up to also, not just to explain this point, but like to understand that this is a huge drop. The BSP Plus Alliance like basically has at the very least 10 seats. Like, when I wrote this originally, the BSP coalition had a different party members. I don't know if it's changed, but like basically like 10 and below. Like, those are the numbers of the coalition. They're basically the Liberal Democrats in the UK. Basically, do you want to oppose these guys or oppose these guys, but don't really want to be able to do anything? Vote for us. Basically, feel-good party. But, as you can probably guess, it's essentially a two-alliance race. On one side of the aisle, we have the Indian National Developmental Inclusive Alliance. or the INDIA alliance. Yes, the name of the alliance is the India Alliance. A little on the nose there, buddies. A big tent coalition of 29 political parties that are united under one major goal: get rid of Modi. And when I say big tent, I truly mean big tent. The coalition ranges from far left to center right on the political spectrum. But most of the parties are generally in the center to center left range. Again, it would be foolish to go over all the parties, so I'm only going to be going over the six. Like, these six are kind of like the biggest and like most notable parties in the coalition, just so we can get a broad sense of the party. Alright, so here we go. There's the Shiv Sena Uddhav Balasaheb Thackeray, a center-right Hindutva split-off party of another party called Shiv Sena, who is led by the aptly named Uddhav. Like, Uddhav is basically like a guy who's part of Shiv Sena, who's like, man, you guys are like joining up with Modi. Fuck you guys. I'm joining the India Alliance. Then there's the Communist Party of India, a Marxist-Leninist party in India that focuses its attention on 3 states. Then there's the All India Trinamool Congress, a liberal, progressive, and Bengali nationalist political party. The Communist Party of India Marxist, the other Marxist-Leninist party in India, the bigger one. The proof of that being that this party is actually a national party. Next we have the Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam, a party whose primary ideology is Dravidianism, which is a left-wing nationalistic ideology focused on the states of Tamil Nadu that seeks to end the caste system that oppressed ethnic groups in their states particularly. And a funny tidbit that a lot of you probably might think is hilarious is the fact that the guy who leads this party is a man by the name of M.K. Stalin. Yet despite that fact, this party is more of like a reformist party and not like a hardcore like revolutionary left-wing party. But the biggest one, and the one that I have aptly avoided saying the name of, is the Indian National Congress, a center-to-center left political party serving the similar role of the African National Congress, basically the party of the independents. Of course, as I mentioned before, they ended up getting complacent with certain regards, which is definitely why they're not doing so hot nowadays. And unfortunately, on the other side, we have the National Democratic Alliance, a big tent coalition of 37 political parties united under one major goal: keep Modi in power. But this tent is mostly focused on the right wing, with a couple of stragglers here and there. But this one makes even less sense. First we have this one. I just brought this one up I brought up the first two just for funnies. The Sikkim Kratikari Morcha, which is a democratic socialist party in the state of Sikkim. Then there's the All Indian NR Congress, which is a split-off faction of the Indian National Congress. There's the Shiv Sena party proper. There's Janata Dal United, a socialist party in the east/northeast part of India. There's the National People's Party, a culturally conservative secular national party. But of course, the biggest one that I've only used the acronym of is the Bharatiya Janata Party, a Hindutva and neoliberal party, which is, of course, the currently leading fascist party of India. As far as I've been able to research, there are really only 2 major events that I find notable enough to mention in regards to the issues in regards to this upcoming election. The events that I've seen that have been very interesting for me is the fact that Rahul launched another big march, the Bharat Jodo Nyaya Yatra, Indian Unity and Justice March, on January 14th, which will end on March 20th. This one is supposed to call for the pursuit of social, economic, and political justice. And another thing that's interesting is the fact that the India Alliance announced the fundraising model Donate for Desh, i.e. Donate for the Country, inspired by Mahatma Gandhi's Tilak Swaraj Fund, which has currently raised over 240 million Indian rupees, adjusted for US currency. That's $2,895,655 as of the time I'm recording this. And now this is the sad part where I have to get into the fact that polling-wise, we're fucked. India is fucked. Now, this is a place that has two different types of polling. First, we have the polling in the states, like we have polling in regards to vote share, which isn't necessarily the best, but it is interesting. Okay, so the most recent polls that have been released have and their Indian sample sizes are better, because look at this sample size, 1 million voters on this sample size. But unfortunately, the reason, it's not that they're representing a larger percentage of the population, it's that India has a way larger population. So let's look at all the polls briefly. Okay, so here's all the, first I'll just say the poll numbers. 43-41 for an August 2023 poll. Then there's 42.6 to 40.2. But let's just look at the most recent ones in March. Okay, so 52-42 for the N.D.I.A, 46-39 to the N.D.I.A, and 48-32 to the N.D.I.A. So it's not doing so hot. Originally, it seemed like things were doing way better, because the margin of error, the lead was basically in the realm of the margin of error, so it's maybe there's a chance. On the leads were 2, 2.4, 2.4, 4.3. But the most recent lead, as I mentioned before, is 16 points, 48-32. And the seats show very similar stories, with the most recent poll showing a potential for a 411 N.D.I.A coalition versus 105 of India, with 27 seats going to other parties. And it's basically, N.D.I.A seems to be the one that is the most likely to win. Very unfortunate. The N.D.I.A is projected to win. INDY coalition does have a chance, but don't get your hopes up. And even then, the INDY coalition is mostly center-left. So maybe, hypothetically, if you in India, I would recommend voting for a left-wing party. Hopefully one that is in line with the India coalition, but fortunately I ain't gonna do so much. So thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when a future video might comes out. And if you're using more content from me, you can go to my website, follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, or consider supporting me on Patreon.